time for chapter 5 of the Titanic. And if we remember back, Patty helped some of the third-class passengers make their way up to the deck so that they could try to board the lifeboats. They're only boarding women and children right now, and really only boarding first-class passengers who are being very resistant to getting on the lifeboats because they find it hard to believe that the boat is actually sinking. Chapter 5, RMS Titanic, Monday, April 15th, 1912, 12:35 a.m. Mr. Masterson thumped along Scotland Road, moving as fast as his crutch would carry him. Despite his ruined legs, he felt strangely invigorated and alive. This night, for the first time in 24 years, he had acted as his alter ego, Jack the Ripper. Alas, he had not been successful, but that was only due to his infirmity. This would all change when he reached New York. After his doctor's miracle surgery, he would be whole again and ready to resume his life's work. But that horrible Bronson girl and Huggins, the steward, had both seen his scrapbook. He could not allow it to fall into the hands of someone who might present it to the authorities. After the collision with the iceberg, there was a good chance they might have to abandon ship. In that case, any salvage operation might come across his precious souvenirs, prompted by the accusations of those dreadful young people. If his true identity were proven in a court of law, he would undoubtedly dance at the end of a rope. That means he would be hung or killed. That was the reason for this mad dash to E-deck. He must get down to the baggage hold to recover his scrapbook. His vital mission must not end before it could be reborn. He had barely passed the first access ladder that led down to the boiler rooms when his crutch suddenly slipped out from under his arm, and he went down with a startled cry. He hit the deck, not with the painful wallop he expected, but with an icy splash. What? Water? He pulled himself back to his unsteady stance and stared ahead. Good Lord, why hadn't he noticed it before? E-deck was on a slant, the way a sandy beach gave way to lapping sea. And if this was happening here, this far aft, well then. Masterson was no sailor, but the image that formed in his mind could not have been clearer. The Titanic's bow remembers the front of the boat, was dipping below the ocean's surface, filling with water. The supposedly unsinkable vessel was sinking. There was no longer any reason to worry about the scrapbook. The hold was surely swamped, and his incriminating memoir was destroyed. He felt a momentary sense of loss that was replaced in short order by a second conclusion. The Titanic was headed for the bottom of the ocean. His most urgent task was to get himself aboard one of those lifeboats. Nothing must interfere with his destiny, not even the death of the greatest ship the world had ever known. Lower away! The first starboard side boat was on her way down, descending in jerky fits and starts as the sailors allowed the heavy line to pay out. No one had considered the possibility that the lifeboats might actually be used. Therefore, the crew had not invested any time in training how to use them. Modern shipbuilding had gone far beyond that, or so we believed, Alfie reflected ruefully. He peered over the side and was astounded to find the dangling craft more than half empty. He turned to one of the crewmen at the ropes. Why didn't you fill her? Oh, so you know more about it than Mr. Lightoller, the sailor shot back, his arms working like pistons. Then why didn't he fill her? Alfie cried. There is not 30 souls aboard. 28, Huggins, to be precise. The second officer squared his shoulders to Alfie. In a boat with a capacity of 65. Not that I'm obligated to explain my orders to the likes of you. But why? There are so many that need to be rescued. Too much weight could buckle a wooden hull, Lightoller explained with his customary confident decisiveness. I've seen the bosun's mate and a few hands down to the lower gangway door. We can fill the boats from there. What if they never find the lower gangway door? Alfie demanded. Don't be absurd, man. Why shouldn't they? The forward compartments are filling up and spilling over, Alfie told him in agitation. The lower decks are awash. It's getting worse every minute. The second officer digested this thoughtfully. If that's true, Huggins, then it would appear that we are all in a rather tight corner. A tight corner? Alfie echoed. You might have sent your men to find a door that's underwater. Won't you at least call them back? I'll go myself if it pleases you. Your responsibility is to your passengers, Huggins. My passengers are awaiting their turns on the boats, Mr. Lightoller. There's nothing more I can do for them now. Your duty is to see to their comfort, Lightoller reminded him. See to their comfort? The young steward had spent most of the voyage scared to death of the Titanic's no-nonsense, by-the-book second officer. But this lecture on responsibility and duty was nothing short of ridiculous. They are shivering in their life belts and pajamas, and their dream ship sinks into the waves. I can't imagine a single one of them being very comfortable, Mr. Lightoller. You'll have to put me on report. You are insubordinate, Huggins, Lightoller told him, his voice under tight control. Yes, sir, I suppose I am. He wheeled on the second officer and started below. The stairs were noticeably tilted, each step not quite where he expected it to be. Forward along Scotland Road he hurried, keeping an eye out for the boatswain's mate and his group. But Alfie had always known his real reason for coming down here. Fireman John Huggins, Alfie's father. The Titanic's hull was divided into 16 sealed compartments. It was the feature that supposedly rendered the great ship unsinkable. But what was happening in reality was that each compartment was filling up and then spilling over the top into the next. The result was that the water seemed to be coming from all directions, even trickling down from above. Alfie swung a leg into the opening and descended the crew ladder to the boiler rooms, trying to ignore the relentless icy dribble from above. The scene on the orlop deck, however, soon erased all thoughts of his own discomfort. The combination of white-hot fire and waist-deep water had conjured a cloud of steam as dense as porridge. He took off his sodden jacket and waved it wildly in an attempt to disperse the scorching fog. As his vision cleared, he took in the Titanic's black gang, the water near to their chests, still stoking the ship's insatiable furnaces. They all looked alike, drenched and soot-stained, yet Alfie would have known his own Da among 100 such men. John Huggins had traded his shovel for a pump handle, and he was striving to beat back the ever-encroaching sea. What are you doing, Da? You can't pump away the whole ocean. His father paused in his efforts and turned on his son in a fury. Get out of here, you bloody fool! I didn't give you life so you could throw it away. Shocked, Alfie stared at him. Get out yourself. You're not doing any good down here. Nobody needs your engines. The ship's stopped dead. She's not going anywhere but down. That's where you're wrong, boy. These fires don't just run engines. They're keeping the lights on and power to the wireless equipment so we can send distress calls. We're firemen, and this is what we do. But how will you escape? Alfie cried. You're 9 decks below the nearest boat. His father's voice was the picture of weariness and resignation. I'll not be getting out. No, Alfie screamed. There may be things worth dying for, but the White Star Line isn't one of them. In this, of all places, there was a peculiar dignity in the way John Huggins carried himself. At a time like this, a man realizes what his life is really about. Being away at sea, I wasn't much of a husband or a father. What I had, all I had, was my job. And that's what I'll be doing when I take my last breath on this ship. Alfie didn't want to cry, but once the tears started, he couldn't hold them back. You're more than a job to me. A convulsive sob rattled the soot-blackened stoker. It was the first time Alfie had ever seen so much emotion coming from his father. And you to me, boy. That's why you have to promise me you'll survive this night. Now go, and I'll keep the lights burning long enough for you to find a lifeboat. As long as you see the lights, you'll know that's me. They shared a brief embrace. There was no time for more. Then the father was back on the pump, and the son, who had made the promise, was splashing toward the access ladder, his eyes blinded by much more than steam.